One.
Hey yo, what's good everybody, and welcome back to Interviews. I'm here with my homie, Representative Manny Keefe, 15th District, Worcester, and it's so good to have you on. We've talked about a lot so far, but we have a lot more to talk about.
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, it's now time for our special segment. John jumps in. Get on over here, buddy. Jump in here. That's why we didn't want to do that.
It looks great though.
Yeah. I mean, you jumped in. How did it look on camera, Cole? We good?
Great.
All right. There you go, buddy. I want you to be able to hear me in stereo.
I can hear you loud.
Yeah? How do you sound? You sound good?
I sound pretty good.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you, man.
Representative Manny O'Keefe.
Hello,
Hey, John.
Mary. How are you?
How are you?
It's
Good.
nice to see you again.
Good, yeah.
So, I hear you got some things you want to ask Miss Keefe
Yeah.
over here. What have we got for her?
So I've studied criminal justice reform for a long time. It's a subject that's really important to me and my family, and we've been affected by the criminal justice system basically my entire life. We're a lifelong tribe of Irish folks that have done not the best things in our lives, and so we've seen what happens when multiple generations have been involved in the criminal justice system.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things that I find confusing, and this is something that you can speak to from your experience as a representative, is that Massachusetts reports recidivism differently than every other state in the country, right? So there's 49 states involved with a federal agency called the Bureau of Justice Statistics,
Mm-hmm.
but Massachusetts doesn't submit their information to that
Right.
bureau.
Yeah.
And we don't count people who are on probation and parole as recidivists. So that means if you're on probation and you violate your probation for any reason and you go back to jail, you're not included in the statistic that Massachusetts reports. So this has been a problem going back to 1994 when Governor Weld passed the Truth in Sentencing bill here in Massachusetts, which basically means that when a judge sentences you to 7 years, it's 7 years. You know, where in most other states it looks a lot different. And so our rate that we report is in the 40s, which is the lowest in the country, but it's not a real number.
Yeah.
So when Mary is negotiating some of these bills, the administrations, both Republican and Democrat, they can't get away with it. It's been governors on either side, have fought back against some of the reforms that Mary's pushing by saying, hey, our numbers are not that bad, right? So what are you talking about? But because we have such an extensive probation and
Right.
parole system in this state, and the probation system is not part of the correction system.
Right.
It's part of the judiciary, right? So it's operated by the judges,
By the courts.
by the courts, not by the House of Corrections. So, as you've been dealing with this, how frustrated does that make you as a representative, like when you're dealing with this, knowing, the numbers, the situation and why
right.
it's like that? How do you get past that to work with various administrations?
So I think that's the work that's at hand, actually, because the intention of the 2018 bill was to get some of this stuff to work. A lot of it was around data collection, because we know, like when Governor Baker would talk about the numbers, he wasn't including the pretrial numbers. Well, those are incarcerated people, right?
Right.
So, but they weren't being counted because they weren't actually sentenced, right? So they're waiting their trial and they're not being counted. So that's, when we realized that was like, well, wait a minute, this is very skewed, right? And also the Council of State Governments, who was the first entity that came in to kind of look at what was happening in Massachusetts, realized that, there's a lot that's not being counted accurately, and it skews policy then, So we're really frustrated with that. I'm really hoping Governor Healy will have a heavy hand on better accountability. And I have a bill that has to do with use of force, and I filed it for a number of sessions to sort of regulate and put policies in place that really, but there's a data piece to that bill, okay? Like how many times does this happen? Who does it happen to? What does, all of the information that we need about every incident should be counted and looked at and gathered. So we're gonna put aside our use of force bill and focus on the data, okay? Because once we have the data, then we can say, this is where the problem is. Instead of just like putting a blanket on it, it's gonna point to some very, we hope, specifics that would help make a bigger change. So I hope that answered the question.
No, it does, it definitely does. So as you deal with data collection, there's like multiple entities moving around, right? So Makofu is the biggest union in the state, right? One of the largest.
Can you explain what that is?
So Makofu is the Massachusetts Federated Corrections Officers Union, right? And the way that they put the letters together is different from how I said it. But it's all of the corrections officers in all of the state prisons. It does not include the officers in the House of Corrections. They have a separate union. It's a different entity. They're associated, but it's not the same fundraising vehicle. They raise a lot of money for politicians in the state. So, although Mary has been championing these reforms, and there are many other people like Mary in the state House, some of her Democratic colleagues have had a lot of money raised for them by the Corrections Officers Union, right? So what ends up happening is those needs or the wants of the union sometimes conflict with the reforms, particularly in the data area, right? So one of the data things is real-time collection of the cameras in the hallways. So if an incident like Mary is talking about, someone gets into a fight and they use force, let's say, well, let's give an example, but it just happens to be between an African American young man and a Hispanic American young man. Who's the person getting tased, and why? Right? Who's the person who's being?
Is that your question?
Yeah. No, this is what we're.
No, that's exactly the use of force, the kind of stuff we're talking about.
Yeah.
So, body cameras and all of that needs to be looked at, and no reporting, before you actually see a lot of times we feel like officers are allowed to see the camera, and then the story is crafted around what's on the film, right? So, no, we want to make sure that doesn't happen.
So that Mary would get access to the cameras, the different committees would see it before they can write a report, and not write a report as they're watching the camera.
It's interesting now that you bring that up. I did see a case where the officer, we really got to go because Cole he's gonna come grab me by the throat if I don't.
Well, obviously there's a lot to talk about.
Thanks for letting me jump in though.
Thanks for jumping in. I'll jump out.
Yeah.
And I'll tell my story when we come right back after this break. You're watching Interviews. Cole, thank you so much for keeping me on time, bro. I can't do this without you. Shout out to my man Cole back behind the camera producing for us. This is Interviews. We'll be right back.